Alive all the time.
Hi, everyone. This is McKenna Johnston, and I am here with Hallie Gray. And we're here to talk about the awesome process of how you get a waitlist in your business, that infamous sexy waitlist that makes it so much easier to thrive in this online world so you're not constantly scrambling for customers and to get customers to fall madly in love with you and want to stick around and join your list. So welcome to
Uh,
Hallie, and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
Yeah. How you doing in that lovely winter in Wellington right now?
Good, good. So far, so good. It's fairly warm here, so it's nice. But yeah, it's 9 a.m., so we'll
That's
just
awesome.
combine.
Well, cool. Well, just for all the people who've never attended a webinar of this kind before, there's an awesome little chat box that is there for you to chat whenever you feel like joining us. And if you have friends who are supposed to be here and you don't see them, um, you might want to shoot them this link because we've got some glitchy links things going on. Webinar Jam is breaking my heart. 1 second, let me see if I can find it. It doesn't look like I can. Never mind. Well, just post if you need it or if you know someone who does. So welcome. And so, Hallie, tell
Yep.
me some of the things it takes to build a wait list. Like if you could say the top, let's start with the top most important thing. What is the most important thing that gives you a business with a wait list?
Well, that would be like a website. But if you have your website sorted, it would be having a really compelling sales page, which is one of the top things. Oh man, it'd be hard to pick actually, because now that I'm thinking about it on the fly, I'm thinking blog content and awesome blog posts or videos or podcasts that I'll lead to your sales page, which is on your awesome website. It's hard to pick. I can't pick.
So if
I
you
have
were
to.
to give someone a roadmap of the 3 things they could do in the next week that would help them with their getting a wait list, what would they be?
So on my blog right now, I've got a webinar, like a tiny workshop about helping them calculate how many clients they actually need to be booked out. Because once you figured out that number for your monthly client, load, basically how many you can do, it helps you figure out or it helps you sell them. Because basically, once you know the number, you can start promoting it, and promoting that number is a really great selling technique as well. Because once you put a limit on it, people start getting really excited about it, and they want it, and it puts it more in demand. So figure out your client list or client load number, and then I would do a whole bunch of content posts around your product or your service you're trying to get booked out. So
Nice.
yeah,
So
workshop. Yeah.
so let's talk about that client load number. What
Okay.
do you mean about promoting that number?
So once you figured out how many spots you have for the upcoming month, so in this case June, you would say, hey, I've got 2 spots available for this service, which could be something like a package or a workshop or whatever. And once you put that on Twitter or Facebook, or let your current clients know that if they want to keep working with you, this is, your availability is limited. It helps you sell those spots because you can do an actual real live countdown of being like, hey, just got another client signed on, so I've only got 1 spot left. And having that sort of awareness around your availability makes people more excited about working with you, and it helps you get booked out in advance. So it's all a numbers game. It is
Right.
pretty fun.
So is there anything special you suggest on when you pick a number? Is there a number of a starting point that's more comfortable than others, or does it really matter what the number is? Is it more compelling when the number is only 5, or does it matter if the number is 100?
Yeah, I've got back on the website a worksheet so that you can break down actual time that you have available for clients. So that way you can see, all right, personally for my business, depending on how I like to work, I can only handle 5 clients per week, let's say, which turns into 20 clients per month. And when it comes to numbers, I think it matters if like clearly the fewer you have, the easier it is to sell them because it feels like there's more, pressure for people to buy. But at the same time, if you have like the list numbers and the audience, you can just setting a number around your stuff really helps you know what you're shooting for and understand better if your marketing is on par.
Awesome. So if you're going to start by picking your number and then start promoting that number, what would be the next step? Other than, you can't just put a number and say, hey, I've got 2 spots left for coaching, right? You got to be a little bit more specific. So if the number is super important, and I can vouch for that because I just booked out for the first time ever, and I totally did that, and it worked, magic. And
yeah, it's cool.
Everywhere. I was like, I have 2 spots left. I have 2 spots left. I have 1 spot left, and then I was booked. And so yeah, that magic number really helps. So if you pick your magic number, what are the things that have a happy marriage with that magic number?
So then the next step would be creating like really cool content around it. So it could be things like when you're basically, your service is a solution, right? So someone has a problem and you've figured out this really cool way to help them out and get them to a new place or a new result. So you're basically changing their lives for the better. And there's a lot of questions that come out of people not knowing if they haven't worked with you before or if they haven't done that sort of work before. A lot of questions that you can answer with content. So it could be things like what sort of hesitations they have when it comes to working with you. Could it be something like they don't know how the process looks? They just don't know if it's right fit for them, or it could be things like what are the actual benefits and what will their life be like after. So creating that content and then using a call to action at the bottom saying I've got 2 spots left if you need help with this before I'm booked out till August or September is a really great way of getting people engaged with your stuff, because promoting a sales page is usually very hit or miss. You haven't developed a relationship with these strangers, so sending them to a sales page doesn't work unless it's like a word of referral recommendation. And so what you want to do is create this blog content as a way for people to get engaged and excited about what you're creating, and then have that call to action being signing up for working with you. And it takes 7 touches when it comes to content to get people from reader to buyer. And so that's basically what you're doing, is breaking down those barriers between them wanting to work with you but not sure of how that would work and a whole bunch of hesitations to actually buying and hitting the buy button.
Awesome. So I'm going to repeat that and put it up as a sticky. It takes 7 touches to turn a reader into a buyer. Like that. Takes at least 7 touches to turn a reader into a buyer. So there are a number of ways to touch people. You mentioned content. So when we think about touching people, I think it's important to remember that every post you make doesn't necessarily touch the person, right? Like, just because they're on your list doesn't mean they opened that email. And just because they've read one blog doesn't mean they're going to come back within the next time you post, right? So there's a long-term strategy there. So what are good examples of touches other than blog posts? What are other ways to touch a client so that you can build that relationship?
Yeah. So it'd be things like Facebook groups, doing things like Twitter parties, basically being social on social media, but with a very clear intention of making sure that you're connecting with people in a way that's not salesy, but actually genuine and authentic. So it could be like a simple thing is like helping people with their, talking to people like you would your friends. So it could not be around like marketing. It could be around like running your first 5K or developing your relationships in another way. So anything that you're doing, like emailing, tweeting, being on Facebook. I find Facebook groups a great way to start to develop those relationships quite quickly and intimately. And then, your newsletter is a great way as well as your blog content and promoting that, which is another way to do it.
So for people who are just starting out and have a smaller list, let's say less than 200 or even less than 100, do you suggest that they make their goals more lofty or keep their numbers smaller for the sexiness factor?
Well, I guess it would depend on them and their price rates. If they've got a small list, which is totally fine, they could have the word of referral machine um, on their side from previous clients who are spreading the word about them. So I don't know if list necessarily means that you won't get your service booked out, but I think, yeah, I don't think lists actually, unless you're selling something like a product where you're trying to do scalable income in that way, like the passive income everybody talks about. I mean, your list numbers don't determine your success in getting booked out. They just mean that you need to, yeah, make sure your word of mouth referrals are really working for you from your previous clients.
So I want to talk about that small list and then talk about the word of mouth referrals. So what do you mean by a small list is totally fine? You always hear that, and I'm in agreement with you, by the way.
Yeah.
You always hear that having a list and list building is the single most important thing you must do in the internet to be successful and have an income that's sustainable and build a business that works for you.
Yeah.
Tell me why that's bullshit.
Awesome. I love a firm stance. It's bullshit because in my own experiences, when I started this business and went full time, I only had like 5 subscribers, and I made about $5K in the first month of selling this service that I had at the time. And it wasn't. You don't need those newsletter list numbers, because basically, if you're connecting with people and making real sort of authentic relationships happen outside of your newsletter list, you can still have a thriving business. You can still have people who want to work with you. You can still use other people's social media networks to help promote your stuff, and that actually works really well if you know people of different sort of audience sizes and you can get them on board to promoting your stuff. Then you don't really need a newsletter list. Newsletter lists are really important for things like selling a product, because if you're selling $15 worksheet or workbook, you want the numbers on your side. Whereas if you're selling a service, you want that intimacy and connection on your side, and you get that by talking to people one-on-one. And newsletters sometimes are a great way for people to sort of sit back and see what you write. And, you know, so I don't really think that necessarily you need a big newsletter list. It is bullshit.
Awesome. And I started my business without a newsletter last year completely. That was when Facebook still worked really well as a page.
Oh, nice.
And yeah. I was newsletter list until December. And as Facebook's algorithm got tighter, I was forced to create one. But I was perfectly content without one at the time.
Yeah. I know. I feel like a lot of people don't want to make one, and I can totally see why. And like, they get really obsessed about the numbers. That's totally legit. It's just not. There's not one indicator of how successful you'll be in business.
That's so true. So we had a question from Heather Hallie. She said, was it those 5 people on your list that you sold your 5K to, or was it to a wider public?
No, it was to the people I was talking to in Facebook groups. So the connections I was making in social media and online, and their referrals ended up turning into more work for me. So do a great job, and more people talk about you and recommend you.
That's awesome. So how do you make word of mouth referrals work for you?
You know, that's a great question, and I've actually thought about this a lot, because it's very much out of your control what people say or do. Some people are naturally, you know, they help pimp you out quite easily. It's part of their personality. Other people don't really mention it unless, you know, I guess if you ask them to. What I like to do is just always kind of summarize the results that we've gotten as when we work together. So a lot of the work from that first round where I made 5K with like 5 people on my list was because the client I was working with got booked out 8 months in advance, and so that was a very tangible result that they could see, and that got them excited. And I guess I did what I said, and that made people really excited about it because they were getting what they invested in.
I'm just writing that down. Sorry.
Yeah.
So do you think that most of your people, do you encourage your people to talk about you, or do you let them talk about you?
Sometimes I'll ask for help to spread the word, and sometimes they'll just talk about me by themselves. what I just focus on is trying to do my best job with helping them reach specific goals we come together with. So depending on the package or service they bought.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we have another question, which is how do we connect with people intimately when nobody's coming forward to connect? How do you fix that?
So pretend like the internet's a massive party and everybody's just standing around pretty much with 2 feet of space in between them, like close enough to hear what the other person's saying, but not close enough to actually make a connection. And you have to be the kid who goes up to these people and starts these conversations and has to go up and starts to, take that risk of reaching out to people because everyone's shit scared of being rejected by other people. And if you don't go out there and start touching people on the shoulder and be like, hey, you're cool, I would love to talk to you more or hang out with you, whatever, then you're not going to make any sort of forward progress if you're waiting for other people to reach out to you because that shit doesn't happen. And I know introverts really hate hearing that, and I'm an extrovert myself, but that's just kind of the fact of life. Like, once you take it into your hands and control that sort of connection rate, it's very liberating. And I don't mean that you have to go up and be obnoxious, but basically you just have to reach out and be like, I really like this post you did. Or, I'd really love to hear your thoughts on this. Or even just going to a Facebook group and asking for help. I find that works really well in the group I've started on Facebook. So, yeah, you just need to go out there and start saying hi to people. And sometimes it works really well, sometimes it doesn't, but that's how you get out there and connect.
Yeah, I think that's something I talk about with my clients all the time because most of my clients are artists and introverts, and I totally, despite being fairly bubbly, being an extrovert sucks all my energy dry, so I'm actually an introvert. I'm a bubbly one and a fairly vibrant, loud one, but being at a party for longer than an hour, I sleep. I'm done. I'm just drained. So I talk about that a lot, about being audacious, which we talked about this, being audacious booking and how to book out in advance, and the idea of reaching out to someone, replying someone, any of that sort of stuff. My biggest technique I have used is actually taking some of the bigger names and talking about their content in my content. Yeah. And that's a great way to do it. Yeah, and then posting it on their Facebook pages or replying them saying, thanks so much for the inspiration because I have a response. Or I included your free opt-in in part of my post. And then they'll often tweet it or email it out to their lists. I mean, it's happened more than once, and I watch my numbers go. Yeah. A few days later, they drop off again. Back to and they're always slightly higher. Like, if you look at the spikes in your traffic or the spikes in the people talking in your groups, those people with those huge followings, and it's all because you reach out. If you're just constantly putting content out into the ether that doesn't link to anybody else's content or talk about anybody else's, you're just at the party going, I am talking about my stuff. Just like you said, you're just there talking. You got to kind of reach out and grab them and go, look, I talked about you. And look, I talked about you. And at least one time out of 20 it'll work. And it doesn't always work. I have reached out to a lot of people. Yeah. So it's a numbers game, just like dating. But Sarah Von Bargen's actually really great at that. She can grow media presence like wow. And the way that one of the techniques she does is by creating a links roundup list. And then not just creating the list, because that's great, but also creating the tweets that go along with it that include the handles of the people who have their content promoted in it. And that helps out because it helps other people retweet it because they're part of this kind of collection of links. So that's something as well to do if you want to be a bit more passive about it and not, straight up in people's face. Awesome. So we have another question. We've kind of covered, I think, the bulk of what we wanted to talk, like what we wanted to broadcast about until the end, right? Are we kind of there?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to be in question mode for the next few minutes. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what we do, and then we'll send you on your way. We wanted this to be a wham-bam, 30 minutes and done call. So.
Satisfaction guaranteed.
In 30 minutes or less. So I want want to talk, we had a question from Laren, which is, how do you help clients talk about their intangible and personal results when asking for referrals? And her intangible and personal results were spirituality, internal transformation, and emotions.
Yeah, so for a lot of people in the health and spiritual industries, what happens there is most people want to know if you're either going to make them richer or happier or healthier. And so, when it comes to your intangible results, it's not really, there's a lot of tangible, so I like to call, you have benefits of your service, right? And so it could be something like if you work through your mental roadblocks, you'll help yourself become a happier person. But happier for a lot of people can have a checklist that you can help people understand better how happier will look after you work with them. So you work with them because you're doing spiritual work, and then what happens is that they end up, cutting out a lot of the stress, which means that maybe they start cutting out a lot of that emotional eating, which means that they start to get healthier. And so what I would recommend is thinking about, the clients who have gotten the best results, trying to make that more tangible in the sense that, they're happier because, they wake up without having to hit the snooze alarm all the time. They're happier because, they're happier and they can check that by seeing that they ask for a raise at their day job. You can kind of see how your work affects them in kind of a ripple effect, and seeing that there's actually quite tangible checklist points for a better life on the other side after working with you. So when you're asking for referrals, I would say things like, okay, so what were the results, or how did your life change? And then asking them more specific, like if you had to do a checklist of your life now versus your life after, what would it look like? And seeing how that would differ.
Awesome.
Did that make sense? Because I know that's a tricky one. I know that when you try to help people be happier or more spiritual, it can be hard to understand how that works, but your ideal client's looking for that, so they want that. They want someone to help them with that, and they want to know that you can do that, and that they, you jive. I haven't heard that word in a while.
I use it frequently. That I'm under if I said it earlier. Yeah.
We jump, jive, and whale though, so.
Totally. Yeah. So, and I think I would say that sometimes it is really hard to talk about those intangible things, but even if they can just say, the transformations I've achieved by working with Hallie or McKenna or XYZ person is actually, for people who are looking for intangible results, you don't necessarily need to be as specific because they know what they're looking for is intangible. So a lot of that depends. I work with a lot of health and life type coachy people these days. That was not my original market. That's who I started working with. And oftentimes, when we're talking about how to ask for testimonials, for example, and I'm like, you should get specifics, is what I always say. And then I realize that sometimes there aren't specifics, and if that's what their ideal client is looking for, more airy-fairy, touchy-feely results, it works.
Yeah. I also like to make sure that, when people are, so testimonials are a great way of quality checking your service or whatever, your coaching package. Like, if you say, you want people to feel happier at the end of the 30 days, a testimonial is a great way to make sure that those people actually feel or got the result, got whatever they were supposed to get from that package. And so, I like to use them as quality checkers as well.
That's a really good piece of advice, for sure. Does anybody else have any questions? I will be sending an email out to everyone once this is over with some highlights, kind of like touch points that we talked about, some key takeaways, because it is a lot of information to throw into a 30-minute call, but we're here. So I would love to hear, Hallie, a little bit about what you do and how you work with people, and how people want to work with you, how they can find you.
Cool. So currently I have opened a 6-month marketing and business growth program called the League of Business Badasses. Basically, it's 6 months of like just making the marketing happen, because a lot of people read about marketing and actually don't implement because they find that the generic advice is too generic. And it is awesome. I've been getting some great results with my clients. They're getting booked out. They're selling more. It's fantastic. It sounds pretty douchey when I say it that way, but it is fucking awesome. Um, and I'm also, I've just been focusing on helping people get booked out. So I've also got coaching packages and workshops I'm doing in the States, which I'm fucking thrilled and also terrified about, because that's going to be an awesome new medium.
Awesome. And I kind of run the touchy-feely side of a similar program, actually. It's that if you're not ready to be a badass and you're not sure how to even talk about yourself yet, that's what I do.
Disclaimer. Yeah. I don't like to deal with emotions, so if you like talking about feelings, you should totally go to Mechana. Do it.
Yeah, I'm more of a feelings person, which actually it's funny because Hallie and I have talked a few times about how we do similar things, but for very different people and at very different points in their business. So, I run courses on how to be more audacious and how to willingly start grabbing those people and yanking them towards you. And working on the mindset to do that. If you don't have the mindset to do that, Hallie is not your girl.
No.
I would be. But if you have the mindset to reach them and you just don't quite know how, and you're really like, you don't need the hand holding to do it, Hallie's your gal. Like, we run very different businesses, but we do very similar things just for very different personalities.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah,
so cool.
I love it. And Hallie's email or Hallie's web address is here, evolveandsucceed.com. Mine is mckennajohnston.com. So those are the ways that you can work with us. I mean, I have one more question, and if anybody else has another question, we still have a few minutes. I really do want to keep this short and sweet. But one thing that you can do every day that takes less than 30 minutes but works.
It's kind of a broad question. I'm not really sure what we're referring to here. Just getting booked out?
Yeah, I'm getting booked out.
All right, assist. Okay, cool. I would recommend then working on your content and making sure that it all ties back into the service you're trying to get booked out. So if you're doing a multi-step program or package, then take a look at what you're helping people with. If it's like, so for a marketing person, it'd be help them identify their ideal client. And then you could do something like write a guest post on, or not guest post, you could do a guest post. Write a post on, ideal clients. How do they work? Where do you find them? What's the point of them? And then you would just want to keep doing that for all your content. The content's a major, I can't pick one. This is so hard. Okay, so then the two ones that are biggest are your content and your talking to people on Facebook groups or Google Plus communities or whatever, Twitter. So talking to people one-on-one in social media and writing some kick-ass content that relates to your service. You can't choose. There's a lot of choosing.
No, I think you actually touched on the most important, which is reaching out to people on groups and being active in groups. Because I would tell you that none of the groups, there's a lot of no pimping yourself out in these groups except on certain days. But if you're only broadcasting, you're not going to grab anybody's attention.
Oh, hell no. Yeah, that's a douche move.
Yeah, and even if you're allowed to broadcast weekly, you really got to be active in those conversations. And one of the best ways to promote yourself without promoting yourself is when you see someone say something about a piece that you've written indirectly. It's not actually about your piece of content, but you have a piece of content that answers their question. You can put it in the comments. Be like, I wrote this post on this, and here's a quick answer. If you want the longer answer, I've already written it. And that I would say, once you have your content, that's the key. The amount of people that I have kind of into my ether and into my client roster is from moments like that when, for example, if you'd asked this question in one of the Facebook groups, I would probably say, oh, hey, The best way to do it is reach out to people. And here's a recording I did with Hallie Gray last week. And then they go watch the recording, and then they see our emails, and they connect to us that way. But posting your content as an answer to a question exclusively doesn't work, but answering it in short form, then with your blog post, it's like a massive win.
Yeah. I feel like it'd be a douche move just to say, go read my blog post.
Yeah.
Because that's not really, it's kind of like customer service and PR, and if you're just like, here's a template, go for it, people will be like, yeah, you know what? You're not really given anything.
Yeah, but for sure, yes, there will be a recording for everyone. I will also be sending it. If you signed up via the sign-up link, you'll actually get a synopsis. If you joined via the public link, there will be a synopsis on my page with the link in it. So if you don't follow me, that's the only way to track it down. Any last-minute questions before we sign off? It is exactly 4:30. High five, we did it in 30 minutes.
Damn, I love high fives.
Awesome.
Dance.
Well, any last questions? I know there's a little bit of a delay, so I'm just going to sit here for a second and twiddle my thumbs.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe have a little bit of a head bop and dance party.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm a great dancer. I'm not a great dancer. I'm the Elaine equivalent of dancing. With emotion.
I'm okay at dancing. I'm not great at dancing, but I can
just
do
yeah. So about some sort of body part moving by itself. It's just all right.
Well, thank you for joining us on this lovely afternoon, and we hope to see you around. If you track us down, we both run Facebook groups. We talk about this stuff constantly in there. They're great places to join. They have very different feels. Mine's more touchy-feely, holistic. We talk about health and movement and business, and she's like the business goddess, get down to brass tacks extraordinaire. So
make it happen. Make data happen. I don't know. I've got nothing. That was spontaneous. Didn't work.
Well, we are going to sign off. Oh, a little bit late. We have one more question. How do you make small iterations of experimental consulting initiatives? Ooh, that is a huge question.
There's so many words there that my brain in the morning cannot process.
No, but I think it's a good point. What he means is that, like, how do you make small changes in initiatives? You know, beta test. I'm going to answer that right now. If you've never run an initiative or done a program and you're trying to make small changes, you need to beta test. Offer it for cheap or free, get people into it, and then start changing systems. I mean, I'm a huge believer in iterations, and I also would avoid multiple stakeholders in programs at all costs. Own your stuff and bring in people on your terms. So
totally.
That's my big answer. So, okay. It was great to see you, and if you have any more questions, you can track us down on the internet of the Book of Faces and the Twit machine. We are both there. We're active. If you have questions, it's a great place to reach us. And other than that, so long. Bye.
Bye. Jigs.